Well, I'm pastor of Second Presbyterian Church in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I teach Christian ethics at New Brunswick Seminary. I'm thankful to be here with you this afternoon, evening, as we publicly name the systemic evil of the prison industrial complex and the new Jim Crow. And I think some of the battle is just overcoming the denial. My friend Coleman Brown, who's a graduate of Princeton University and the former head of the Philosophy and Religion Department at Colgate, and a descendant of the abolitionist John Brown, once remarked after spending several hours listening to the intense dialogue and exchange of ideas among those incarcerated at Walpole State Prison in Massachusetts, said, "I sensed I was surrounded by men more intelligent than the faculty of Colgate University." How did so many gifted people, particularly brown and black people, become incarcerated in the United States of America? 1/4 of the world's prisoners locked up in this nation. I agree with Michelle Alexander, who brilliantly articulates some of the ugly pieces of this mystery of the post-civil rights racial caste system. Someone once said, "By the fruits ye shall know them." These strange, bitter fruits take place in the practices and the policies of policing, prosecuting, sentencing, incarceration for profit, and very punitive public policies. The largest item in most state budgets today are for, quote, corrections. We spend far more on incarceration than on education, jobs, and employment training. The dominant but unspoken context of these regressive criminal justice policies are race. As one critic observed, to deliver up bodies destined for profitable punishment, the political economy of prisons relies on racialized assumptions of criminality and public policies and practices in arrest, conviction, and sentencing. The prison industrial system materially and morally impoverishes this nation and devours the social wealth needed to address the very problems that have led to spiraling numbers of prisoners. My own experience as a pastor in Elizabeth confirms this reality, particularly on the level of policing. Shortly after becoming pastor in the 1990s, when I was a little younger, I started a youth group, 13 and 14-year-old young men, mostly black and Latino, and I began to hear stories of police abuse, not only profiling, but intimidation and beating, and sometimes planting of drugs. This was confirmed by public defenders I spoke with and some of the police themselves, and even one state policeman. We learned that there was a neo-fascist white supremacist group in the Elizabeth Police called The Family that targeted black and brown men for drug arrests and violence. And it included the planting of drugs. Several of us clergy met with the police director and different public officials, but nothing was done. We called the state attorney general and nothing was done. We called the New York Times. We knew some folk who sent in an investigative reporter. We need good investigative reporting today. We spent a month working hard, listening, recording, gathering up the facts. And a front page article came out in May 2000 called Blue Shadows in Elizabeth. And suddenly the federal attorney general started returning our calls. You know, the best disinfectant is sunlight. We have to make it visible. We have to work hard. It takes moral courage and perseverance. And changes were made. Some people were forced out and other people, good people, promoted. More change needs to be made, not only in Elizabeth. You know, one thing I learned that back in 1741, 3 leaders of a slave insurrection were captured, incarcerated, and then burned at the stake in front of the Elizabeth courthouse and jail. Those who provided wood for the occasion were reimbursed from state funds. These patterns of state-sponsored violence are connected. We need to learn more about this historicity that continues, and also the hope and the agency that comes from our forebears. We need to make visible this racial violence and continue to pioneer ways to overcome it so we can bring light to bear and break its hypnotic power over our criminal justice system. Just as one parable of hope, my church on April 1st of this year hired a part-time associate of prison ministry and social witness. You know, we had to fight hard for the funding. And among the things the person will be doing are organizing weekly support groups for family members of those incarcerated at Union County Jail, leading classes in a local prison, organizing alternative worship each month on themes of trauma, healing, and liberation, and developing community theater. As our abolitionist and civil rights forebears courageously form broad-based coalitions and partnerships to overcome slavery and then Jim Crow, we too must form these good conspiracies of courage, partnerships of love and justice to dismantle the prison industrial complex and new Jim Crow. To conclude with a word from my teacher and friend Coleman Brown: love without justice isn't fully love, and justice without love isn't even justice. So be it.